Okay, it's restarted.
Great. Thank you, and good morning, everyone. My name is Andrew Johnson, and I'm an analyst with the Building Performance Standards team at the Oregon Department of Energy. Thank you all for joining this morning. Just a few things about WebEx. If you would like to provide comments or ask questions, you can raise your hand using the reactions function at the bottom of the screen. That's the little smiley face there. You can also raise your hand next to your name in the participants list. I think that the panelists and maybe some of our stakeholders are able to unmute and start their video themselves. If that doesn't work for you, just feel free to use the raise hand function. If you would like closed captions, you can find that in the lower left-hand corner of the screen. And if you would like to chat, you can find the chat window in the lower right-hand corner of the screen. For those on the phone, you can raise your hand using *3. And I think I covered it. Before you provide a comment or ask a question, please note your name and organization. And just as a reminder, we are talking about the proposed BPS incentive program here, so please limit your questions and comments to the incentive program. And also please hold your questions and comments until the end of the meeting during the feedback portion. If you have a clarifying question, feel free to put that in the chat, and Judy or someone else will try to answer for you. Are there any questions about WebEx? Okay, in a minute, we'll have Odo staff introduce themselves. Here's just a quick snapshot of the agenda for this morning. We'll review the BPS quickly. I'm sure most of you are familiar with the building performance standards, so we'll just go over that very quickly. We'll look at House Bill 3409 quickly as well, just for a little context as to why we designed the incentive program the way we did. We'll review the proposed incentive program, and then I'm hoping that we'll have at least 30 minutes to hear feedback from our stakeholders and a few minutes at the end of the meeting for general questions and comments. If you do have questions about the building performance standard itself, you can find information on our BPS webpage. And Judy, do you mind putting that link in the chat? And so now why don't we have Odo staff introduce themselves. Blake, can you get us started?
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. My name is Blake Shalide. I'm the manager of the Codes and Standards section at the Oregon Department of Energy. Thanks, everyone, for joining today to hear our proposed rules for how we're going to structure our incentive program for BPS. And with that, I'll turn it over to Ken.
Good morning, everybody. Ken Davies. I'm a program analyst with the Codes and Standard team. Welcome to everybody today. Thanks.
And who else is on the Odo team here? Judy?
Hi, I'm Judy Stockwell. I'm the public service representative for Codes and Standards. Thank you.
Thanks, Judy. And I see Wendy is also on.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. My name is Wendy Simons. I am a rulemaking coordinator for the Odo Planning and Innovation Division, and working on this rulemaking to support Andrew. So working on our various Secretary of State paperwork and helping with the public hearing and comment period that will be coming up shortly. So thank you for coming today.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thanks, Wendy. I think we also have Alan Zelenko with Odo on the line, if he's available.
Hi, everybody. Alan Zelenka. I'm the Assistant Director for Planning Innovation, which includes the Codes and Standards section that Blake heads up. Thanks for coming today.
Yeah, thanks, Alan. And I think that rounds out everyone from Odo who's on. I think Lisa Gartland, a facilities engineer in our section, is also on attending too.
All right. Thanks, Blake. And Odo staff, feel free to mute your video, mute yourselves if you like. Blake, up to you if you want to do that as well. So just quickly about the Oregon Building Performance Standards. I know that most of you are familiar with the Oregon BPS. In 2023, the Oregon legislature passed House Bill 3409, establishing the BPS for commercial buildings. And the BPS addresses energy use and emissions from existing commercial buildings in Oregon. It requires certain commercial buildings to enhance energy management practices and implement efficiency measures to meet energy use targets. And the BPS is broken into two different categories, Tier 1 and Tier 2 buildings. Tier 1 buildings consist of non-residential buildings, hotels and motels, 35,000 square feet and above. And Tier 2 consists of multifamily residential buildings, hospitals, schools, dorms, and university buildings over 35,000 square feet. And non-residential buildings, hotels, and motels between 20,000 square feet and 35,000 square feet. Just a quick review of House Bill 3409. And I'd like to just discuss this briefly to provide some context as to why we designed the incentive program the way that we did. So House Bill 3409, as part of the BPS, directed the department, us, to offer incentives for eligible building owners to voluntarily comply with, or for early compliance with, Standard 100 or the energy performance standard the department establishes under Section 9 of this 2023 Act. And just some more of the statute from the bill. If the covered commercial building is a Tier 1 building, the Tier 1 building must have a baseline energy use intensity that exceeds an energy use intensity target by at least 15 energy use intensity units. And you'll see this later as part of our criteria for part of our eligibility criteria for the program. A little bit about the incentive amounts. The legislature included specific incentive amounts for Tier 1 and Tier 2 buildings. In this section, it talks about Tier 2 buildings, and a Tier 2 building may receive an incentive payment of 35 cents per square foot. I'll give you all a second just to read the whole section here. And also, the language specifies 85 cents per square foot to comply with the standard. It doesn't specifically mention Tier 1 in here. However, we interpret this as providing 85 cents per square foot for tier 1 buildings, primarily because tier 1 buildings have a much more rigorous compliance requirement. And so the legislature wanted to incentivize tier 1 buildings a little more. And a little more context about why we designed the incentive program the way we did. The proposed rules came out of our discussions with the ODO BPS advisory committees, along with 2 incentive workshops, where stakeholders propose that a more critical need and valuable use of limited incentive funding, the $2 million, would be to support energy coaching and assistance. And just want to mention here that, and some of you might be aware, that ODO also has $12 million available for additional incentives through the CPRG, the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant, through the EPA. And we plan to use that funding to incentivize efficiency measures. And that's another reason why we're focusing this incentive program on support for benchmarking and reporting and other compliance actions, and saving the $12 million for actual upgrades to buildings. Some key dates coming up here. I think Wendy mentioned the public comment period. That will start June 2nd, and that will go until just after our public hearing on July 1st. So important to note here that if you don't have a chance to comment today, there will be plenty of time next month to provide your questions and comments on the rules. We plan to have the rules effective in early August. So let's get into the incentive program. Just high level here, as I mentioned, there's $2 million available. We plan to offer $1 million in the first round, $750,000 reserved for tier 1 buildings, and $250,000 for tier 2 buildings. The incentives will be awarded on a competitive basis, and we'll start accepting applications in early August.
Andrew,
Yes.
there's a question in the chat from Tim Miller. Is that 12 million of EPA money already in hand, or is it at risk?
That's a great question, and I had a feeling that would come up. Blake, do you want to go ahead and take that one?
I can address that. That funding is in hand. It's being managed through the Oregon Department of Environmental Quality. ODO is a subrecipient on that funding and on a few other measures as well. And we are proceeding with Oregon DEQ and our other partners in implementing that funding. So it's available. Thanks for the question.
Great. Thank you, Blake. So to be eligible for the program, the building must be a tier 1 or tier 2 covered commercial building. For tier 1, as I mentioned, this was in the statute. The tier 1 building must have an EUI that exceeds an EUI target by at least 15 EUI units. And to receive an incentive payment, a building owner must demonstrate completion of the early compliance action at least 1 year before the building's compliance date. And here are the compliance dates. These are simply 1 year before the actual BPS compliance date for each tier and category. So for tier 1 buildings, the early compliance date is before June 1st, 2027 for buildings 200,000 square feet and above. June 1st, 2028 for buildings 90,000 to 200,000 square feet. June 1st, 2029 for buildings 35,000 and 90,000 square feet, and before July 1st, 2027 for all Tier 2 buildings. Here are the incentive amounts, and these were specifically written into statute. The 35 cents for energy benchmarking and reporting, we figure that most of the Tier 2 buildings that will apply will request the 35 cents. And that is because Tier 2 buildings do not need to fully comply. They just need to report their energy use and their energy use target before the deadline. For Tier 1 buildings, as we discussed with the 85 cents in statute, there's a little more incentive available. Energy management plan and O&M program, 5 cents per square foot. Completing an energy audit, 35 cents per square foot, and achieving compliance, 10 cents per square foot for a maximum of 85 cents per square foot. And in order to provide access to as many building owners as possible, we set some limits on the total amount that a building owner can receive for each building, and that's $50,000 for Tier 1 buildings, 200,000 square feet and above, 35,000 for Tier 1 buildings, 35,000 to 200,000 square feet, and $10,000 for all Tier 2 buildings. We expect to have applications available in early August. And our plan is to have the applications be simple, fillable PDF documents. We understand that there's a ton of documentation required for compliance here, so we want to keep it as simple as possible. We know that you will already have completed your building information in our portal, and so the applications will be submitted through the BPS portal, and the information that we'll require is essentially the general building owner information, whatever compliance action incentive you're applying for, and the incentive calculation and final incentive requested. And this will be a competitive review process. And I'm sure there will be some discussion around the criteria, the evaluation criteria. But in order to provide as much access to building owners around the state, we plan to give priority to the highest EUI percentage over EUI target, buildings that are outside an Energy Trust of Oregon electric utility territory. And this is because ETO already provides a strategic energy management program to building owners in their territory, and that includes incentives for energy efficiency measures. Buildings located in a rural area, smaller buildings for Tier 2, and multifamily buildings for Tier 2. So buildings will be evaluated and assigned a score. Owners will receive written notice within 30 days after the application period closes with the results of their application. Owners will have 30 days to accept the terms of the incentive. And we will provide an announcement before we open the application or make applications available on our website and through email to eligible building owners. That will include the scoring criteria and other information. So to receive the incentive, a building owner must provide evidence that the compliance action has been completed before the early compliance date. And we'll have either a separate application for that or a Part B of the original application. Again, trying to keep it as simple as possible. And a building owner may request incentive payments for each compliance action separately. So if a Tier 1 building has completed their benchmarking and reporting, they can request their incentive for that. And then if they do an energy audit later on, they can request their incentive for that. And so here are the separate compliance actions and the required evidence. And this is still, we're still putting some more detail around what exactly we will require, but this aligns very closely with the compliance requirements for the BPS. For energy benchmarking and reporting, that's essentially the forms required for that action. I think it will be 2 or 3 forms, essentially showing EUIT and EUI, energy management plan and O&M program. Of course, we'll point you to the required forms there, but essentially mirroring the requirements in the BPS for compliance. Proof of a completed energy audit and then achieving compliance, that's essentially showing that you have that the building has met its energy use intensity target. And so that's the end of my presentation. And so now we'd like to open it up for feedback from our stakeholders. The whole purpose of this is to get some initial feedback from you all, answer questions, provide any comments you have on any of the specific proposed rules. And again, please limit your comments to the incentive program itself. If you have general BPS questions or comments, feel free to email our team or contact our team after the meeting. And so if you'd like a little reminder on how to raise your hand, there's a little smiley face at the bottom of the screen where you can find different reactions, including the raise hand, or you can raise your hand next to your name in the participants list. Please, if you would like to provide a comment or question, please remember to note your name and organization.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. It looks like we do have a few questions that have come through in the chat that we have gathered, and we can kind of walk through. Maybe I'll just read them aloud, and you can provide a response. So there was one question that came from Stephen about when are the application awardees announced?
Yeah, so the plan is to announce the awardees 30 days, within 30 days of the closing, the period for accepting applications. So we will have about a 30-day period where you can submit applications after the opportunity announcement. And then 30 days after that, we will announce the awardees.
Thanks, Andrew. Next question from Michael. Can larger multifamily buildings apply under Tier 1 incentives like in Washington?
That's a good question. I believe so. I'm going to stop sharing here so I can see the comments a little better. The question was large multifamily tier 2 buildings? Can they
Right,
receive
yeah,
the
because
incentive?
multifamily are by definition tier 2 in Oregon.
Right. Yeah, so the way we have it designed now is, tier 2, any tier 2 building can receive an incentive, but there is a limit of $10,000 per building.
Right.
Yeah.
Thanks. Next question from JP about will the slide deck be shared after the presentation?
Yes, we will post the recording and the slide deck within a few days in the same spot as the meeting details in the stakeholder engagement page of the BPS webpage.
Thanks. Question from Kathleen, could a tier 2 building receive these additional incentives if they do an energy management plan, O&M program, and or an energy audit? Or are their incentives capped at 35 cents per square foot?
Yeah, that's a great question. We had to get some clarification on this because the statute wasn't totally clear, but we believe that the intent was to allow tier 2 buildings to also have access to that 85 cents max. But again, tier 2 buildings are limited to $10,000.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. The next question from Logan was, will the portal go live in August? I think this is probably specific to the incentive application.
Yes. So I think we're talking about two different things here. And correct me if I'm wrong, Blake, but I believe we have a building data database. And I think hopefully we will be able to come up with some way where we can kind of link the application with the database. And if that doesn't work, then we'll have to do that separately. But
Right.
those
Yeah.
details are TBD.
Exactly, yeah. So the applications for incentives will happen earlier than our BPS compliance portal is online. That will be a third-party software, and the incentives will be open before that is available. Next question, is it possible for larger 550 unit mixed use workforce multifamily to negotiate or be awarded a higher amount based on utilization of innovative technologies?
Well, that's a great question, and I encourage you to submit that during the formal comment period. We're going to consider all these ideas. That's a good one. The way it's designed now is, in order to provide access to as many building owners as we can here with a limited budget, we probably won't make exceptions, but again, we're willing to consider it. Just as a quick note, so if you look at the $2 million budget and say that all of the applications are requesting the median or the average $35,000 per, it's, I don't know, 50 or 60 applications. So we want to make sure that we provide access to as many folks as we can here.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. Next question, and I think it's probably similar to some other questions that that just came through, but can tier 2 buildings, this question's from Adam, can tier 2 buildings apply for achieving compliance action incentives?
Yes. Yep. You can, as long as, well, yeah, you can, but, keep in mind that $10,000 maximum incentive.
Thanks. Next question from Mitch. If we have multiple buildings on the same property, do we go by gross square footage or by individual building square footage?
I'm gonna ask you to answer that one, Blake.
Sure.
If you
Yeah.
don't mind.
So this would be structured similar to the way that buildings are covered within the program, which is based on individual building square footages, not necessarily summing up all of the square footage of all the buildings on one site. So if you have multiple eligible covered buildings on a site, each building could potentially apply for an incentive. Moving through the questions, looks like Stephen gave a +1 to Mitch's question. A question from Dave: are incentive applications limited per building, or would building owners be able to apply for incentives based on portfolios?
That's a great question. That's something that we have not decided yet. The way that it's written in the proposed rules is per building. But again, we want to make sure that we're spreading the funding around as much as we can. We'll have to take that into consideration. But yeah, that's a good clarification question.
Question from Kathleen: did you say that customers can apply for incentives as early as this August or August 2026?
It'll be this August. We realize that many of these things take time, and so we want to get this off the ground as quickly as we can. So yeah, our plan is to have applications available as of this August, and to award the incentives, like I mentioned, pretty close after that, and then that will give building owners plenty of time to comply with to voluntarily or comply early.
Yeah. Thanks. Question from Lisa: how will incentives be equitably spread throughout the state?
And yeah, that's so I mentioned that we're very conscious of that. We want to make sure that we provide access to building owners around the state, and that's why it's a competitive process, and we have the evaluation criteria, including prioritizing building owners or buildings in rural areas outside of Energy Trust of Oregon territory, for smaller multifamily. And we're, of course, these are just draft rules. So if you have some ideas as to how we can equitably give priority to other criteria, then feel free to let us know now, or you can submit your ideas during the public comment period.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. Next question came from Jamie about: can you review what support is available to help with early compliance, like a help call center, technical support? Seeing the focus on early compliance for incentive availability, that seems like it may be key to then getting the incentives. So I think I can address this one, and Andrew, feel free to add in. So yeah, in addition to this incentive funding to help provide resources for things like energy audits, resources for a building owner to benchmark their building and track the energy usage and energy management plans, we are also rolling out additional resources that will be up on our website to provide guidance documents for building owners to help understand what the BPS requirements are, how to benchmark energy, potential pathways for compliance. And we currently have a help desk portal where somebody can ask a question. That's up on our BPS website. I think we can include a link to that. Judy, maybe if you can just put a link to that website up in the chat too. So there are pathways now for submitting questions and help call center, technical support, and we'll continue to be available, and we'll be rolling out more training and more outreach over the coming months as well. The next question came from Logan about when will the scoring criteria be published?
So that will be published, we expect, in early August when we share the announcement. The criteria will be in that announcement.
A question from Samantha, seconding Jamie's question about, is there technical assistance available for building owners and businesses? The answer to that is yes, our website is starting to get more information up there, but we'll be populating that with a lot more information in the coming months as well. And then a question for Tim. Sorry for my fuzzy recollection, but does the BPS also extend further into the future, ratcheting down EUI over time? If so, how does this incentive structure apply into that future?
Again, Blake, I'll defer to you.
Yeah, I can take that one. So this incentive would be for early and voluntary compliance with this first phase of compliance. The BPS structure does require continual rulemaking and reevaluation of the targets every 5 years. So we'll have to do that again in a few years too, but this round of incentive funding would apply for the current compliance cycle. And it's unknown what, if any, other incentive funding might be available for future compliance cycles. Right, and we do expect this incentive funding to be exhausted before those future cycles start. Question from Shelley, are the incentive caps in statute currently?
No, they are not. And the incentive caps are based on data that we have for the average cost for some of these compliance actions, and also trying to balance the available funding with the maximum amounts for each building. And so again, if you have suggestions as to how we could balance the funding with the anticipated number of applications for covered buildings, we welcome that. So please, if you submit comments during the public comment period, we'd love to hear that.
Thanks. The next question came from Adam. How do building owners find their building information in the Odo database to properly ID them in Energy Star Portfolio Manager? So this one isn't necessarily related to the incentives, but separately, we are right now developing our property inventory list, and we'll be sending out mailers to notify all covered building owners next month. That will include a specific UBID, a unique building identifier for every individual building. And after we have that database all built out, you'll be able to use that UBID as the identifier for your building for the purposes of Oregon's BPS program. So not available yet, but coming very soon. Good question, Adam. Thanks. And then let's see, next question is from Kevin, and I think this is related to the incentives amounts again, but he asked, you mentioned the incentive amounts came directly from the statute. Where exactly was that? Are they in House Bill 3409?
Yes.
Yep.
There. Oh, sorry, Blake. I think I can take that one. Yeah. So they are in HB 3409, section 17. Specifically section 17.3 and 17.4.
Thanks. Vin asks, for multifamily buildings, will energy benchmarking and compliance forms need to be completed before applying for the incentive?
No. So you won't need to provide any of the compliance forms before you apply for the incentive. This is essentially to be awarded the incentive if you're eligible and meet the evaluation criteria. And then once you're done with your compliance action, you will submit that documentation to basically claim the incentive.
Thanks. A question from Kevin. Please clarify, explain again what the $2 million versus the $12 million will be used for. Which of these does this first round of $1 million come from, and what is the intended for use for subsequent rounds, the other 11 million? So
yeah, good question. I can understand why that would be a little confusing. So we have essentially two different pots of money. We have the 2 million from the state and the 12 million from the feds, and that's $14 million total. This proposed incentive program is covering the $2 million from the state, and it's broken into, we're thinking, 2 different rounds of $1 million each. And then the $12 million will be developed. The program for the $12 million will be developed soon, and we'll of course have some stakeholder meetings to discuss the proposed design for that program as well.
yeah, thanks, Andrew. A question from Tim about, do we have a solution for federal changes around support for Portfolio Manager and Energy Star? And I can take this one if you want.
Yeah.
I'll just say in short that, we understand and are tracking, we understand that there's an uncertain future for Energy Star Portfolio Manager. We would, certainly like to see it continued in some form. We've heard of a few different potential, potential pathways or potential solutions for its continued existence, but we know that there's some uncertainty moving forward into the future about it. It's integrated into our VPS program rules. We know a lot of other states and jurisdictions and businesses rely on Portfolio Manager for their energy tracking. So we're definitely aware and closely following the situation, and would need to revise the program if Portfolio Manager does not continue to exist. But for now, we're proceeding as if it exists and if it will continue to exist. But we'll definitely be tracking that and responding as we know more information. A question from Lisa about, are the incentives taxable? If yes, that should be noted in the rules.
That's a great one. I don't know. Do you know, Blake?
I do not know. Yeah, I would say consult a tax professional, but I'm not sure. Yeah, it's not a question I've ever come across.
Yeah, Lisa, I will make a note of this and get back to you. If you're not comfortable putting your email address in the chat, feel free to email me directly. And everyone can email me directly if you have follow-up questions. And I'll put my email address in the chat here.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. Yeah, good question. A question from Luke, are the compliance forms already available? If not, when will they be? And I think this is for the building performance standards program compliance forms. They are not yet available. They will be available. We're targeting early to middle of next year for the compliance forms themselves being available. Question from Kathleen, how are you dividing out tier 1 incentives with the 3 different compliance deadlines?
So the compliance deadlines are a year before the compliance date for each of the 3 tiers. And so I would just look at the compliance date for your particular situation, and then just go backwards a year. We'll also have all the early compliance dates available when we submit or provide the opportunity announcement. Did I answer your question? If not, let me know. I'll follow up.
I meant like it's for the 3rd round that's not due until 3 years past the 1st round. How do you make sure there's enough funding available for that group with the amount that you allocated to that tier 1 is what I was getting at.
Good question. You know, Blake? You have an answer for that?
No, I don't think so, but Kathleen, we can maybe have future discussions, I guess.
Yeah. And feel free, we might need to think about that one a little more, but Kathleen, feel free to email me and we can get right back to you.
And then let's see, moving through the questions, I think we're getting close to the end, but question from Samantha. Please forgive me if I missed this prior, but are there reporting requirements for the incentives separate from the compliance forms? Thinking especially for the $12 million in federally supplied funds, if there are additional reporting requirements, hopefully those are noted in the rules as well. And I'll note that the rules for this portion of the funding are not for the 12 million in federal funds. We're only talking about right now the $2 million for state funding. But there will be, with that federal funding portion, there will be other reporting requirements due to some of the federal grant and tracking requirements that are part of that. But those are coming later this year. Question from Kevin: can you say more about Odo's thoughts, plans for the use of the other 13 million?
By the other 13 million, you mean the 12 million plus the 1 million in the second round? Yeah.
I think, yeah.
So the second 1 million, the 1 million in the second round, we expect will be similar to the requirements for the first round. There might be some minor adjustments depending on how the first round goes. And then the 12 million from the CPRG, the federal funding, we have not yet developed that program, but we're pretty certain that the funding will be used to incentivize efficiency measures.
Right, that is one of the criteria for the $12 million of federal funding, that it would need to go directly to greenhouse gas reduction measures as well. So it wouldn't necessarily be for things like energy audits and benchmarking. It would go more toward the energy efficiency greenhouse gas reduction measures themselves. And then question from Then, would tier 2 buildings need to benchmark for calendar year 2026, or could an incentive be received for an earlier 12-month period?
That's a good question. What do you think, Blake?
Yeah, I don't know that we've really thought through exactly which years need to be benchmarked. I think we would want the most recent years benchmarked. As at least as far as it concerns with compliance. So, but I don't know that that specificity is built necessarily into the rules themselves. Yeah. Question from Stephen: is there current legislation you could expect to add funding to the program, specifically tier 2 buildings? There is no current legislation in Oregon's legislative session right now that would add additional funds to this incentive program.
Great. It looks like Michael has his hand up.
Yeah, just to comment on Van's question is Washington State, I think we limited to 3 years backdating. So something to consider.
Right. Yeah, thanks, Michael.
Oh, thank you.
Appreciate it. I don't see any other questions. Apologies if I missed any. If somebody submitted a question and we didn't read it, please feel free to raise your hand and flag it for us.
Like there's another.
Oh, I do see a question that just came in from Ben. Is 35 cents per square foot a maximum for benchmarking? If not, it seems that more buildings could be added if the incentive was lower.
Again, 35 cents is part of statute. 35 cents needs to be made available to tier 2 buildings. In terms of how that is broken up, I think there could be some flexibility there. So if you have specific suggestions as to how that would work, please let us know. You can email me or you can wait until the public comment period.
Right. And then I'll also just note that in addition to the 35 cents per square foot for benchmarking, there are also caps for buildings based on their size as well. So, for example, based on their size and tier, and those caps are included in the rules too. So, for example, $10,000 for tier 2 buildings, and there's other caps for tier 1 buildings as well.
All right. So we've got 6 minutes left. Feel free to ask a question or provide a comment if you have one. And just while we're waiting for any additional comments, just as a reminder, the public comment period opens on June 2nd. And so there will be more information about that on our BPS webpage, rulemaking page. You'll be able to provide any comments you have on the proposed rules. And then we plan to have a public hearing to discuss the rules again on July 1st. And there will be 2 to 3 days after that to provide comment before the end of the public comment period. Looks like we have another hand raised. Adam?
Yeah, Adam Holscher with Portland Community College. I just kind of thinking through the timeline on all of this. So August of 2025, applications would be available for 30 days. The incentives would be, at least the first $1 million of incentives would be assigned to buildings that applied. They would then have 12 months to achieve their goals and receive those incentives. Is any leftover money kind of going back into the pot for the next round, or is there a future like intermediary round of applications that could go out?
Yeah, good question. We haven't decided when we would open the second round of funding. Just to clarify on your comment about the compliance, so it would be 1 year before your compliance date. So that depends on your situation.
I guess, sorry, what do you mean by the 1 year before your compliance date? Is you've complied 1 year before the required compliance date? Is that the?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. So
So if I was,
for example, if your building is a tier 1 building over 200,000 square feet, your compliance date would be, for the BPS compliance would be before June 1st, 2028. And the early compliance date to claim your incentive would be a year before that. So you would have to complete your compliance action if you were awarded an incentive a year before that. Does that make sense?
yes, it does. Thank you.
Yep. All right, we've got 2 minutes left. Any last comments or questions? We'll keep the meeting open until 11 o'clock, just in case anything else comes up. Right.
Thanks a lot, everybody, for joining today. We'll still
Yeah.
hang out for a few minutes, but I'll just say before, in case folks start logging off, just thanks for joining. Thanks for the good comments and questions, and definitely welcome any other comments that come through the official public comment rulemaking process.
Yes, I concur. Thank you, everyone. And it looks like people are dropping off, so I guess we can close the meeting. Again, this meeting recording will be posted on the BPS webpage in addition to the slide deck. So Blake, if it's all right with you, I guess we can go ahead and sign off.
I think so. Yeah. Thanks, Andrew.